Hi, I'm John Fitzgerald and welcome to this week's edition of Team Wealth Builders. Today, a very special topic. Who moved, I should say, where's my freaking cheese? And what it comes from is the book called Who Moved My Cheese? That doesn't look like a book, does it? But this is the new book today. And that's how things have changed. And the whole book, the premise of the book is that, for those of you who haven't read it, it's a small book worth reading, is essentially they put cheese from mice in different place or in the same place. Cheese goes back there, the mice goes back, mice goes back. Then they move the cheese. One mouse keeps on going back to the old place while the other finds the new place. And that is us today. If you are over the age of 30 or maybe even over the age of 20, your world has changed dramatically. What you were doing 10 years ago isn't working today. It's just not working today. And particularly in Australia, we have a fundamental shift and you have to get on top of this. And change is opportunity. Life is change, but change is opportunity. And those that are going to be successful and prosperous seize that opportunity and look for that opportunity. And those that don't, fledge and fail. They keep on trying to do what they did before, realizing that it's becoming less and less and less and less successful. And I'm going to give you lots of illustration on that today. In fact, I want to tell you three stories, three particular pertinent stories. One, 72-year-old couple, friends of mine, retired in 2006 with $800,000. Went and saw a financial planner. In fact, they came and saw me and I naturally said, look, put your money into property, don't gear too much, be cash flow positive, can't get into too much trouble. Went and saw a financial planner. Financial planner put the whole $800,000 into shares. A year later, or that nearly, shares half the price. They had to sell out. They couldn't hold on because they lost a lot of their income. Now at age 72, they've had to go back to work. Now that's a real fundamental shift for them and a real change where the cheese has moved significantly. And you think about, and I can tell you so many stories about people at that age in life where they work for 30, 40, 50 years getting a nest egg for themselves only to find that's been dissipated. And let's look at the facts on that. 80% of Australians, that is everyone with superannuation in a non-self-managed superannuation fund, has lost nearly 50% of their super because the fact is that the people who manage our super put it all into shares and equities and things like that, and their returns, they've lost a lot of their capital and their returns maybe 1%, 2%, 3%. Now, you need to be doing something about that, and I always say, if you can, set up your own self-managed super fund. But that's just one example of people in their 70s. Another classic example is a friend of mine. She's a lady, 4 kids, husband, 4 kids. Marriage breaks down at age 58. She loses the house at age 60. So financially goes broke at age 60. Moves in with her son. Her son's a truck driver. She decides rather than sitting around moping, and she's not a moper, I'll get on and learn how to drive trucks. Today at age 65, believe it or not, she's driving trucks in the mines, earning $138,000 a year, 7 days on, 7 days off. She said to me, John, you know what, I've never been happier because I've reinvented myself, and wow, what an opportunity. And I'm working with young and old people in this great environment. I go up, I stay in an apartment where everything's provided for me. It is just amazing. Reinvent yourself. Her cheese completely moved. And she said to me, I've never earned more than $50,000 a year before in my life. Now $138,000. Incredible. And for me, I'll tell you how my cheese has moved. And this is a story that I often laugh about. Back when the GFC hit, the head of one of Australia's biggest banks, or one of the top 4 banks, came up to Queensland and took a small group of us out to dinner and said, guys, you've banked with us for over 20 years. You've done all your lending with us for development and construction. And we're here to say we're going to look after you. Don't worry about anything. And one of the guys sitting next to me was a billionaire, one of Australia's biggest developers. And I said to him, "Boy, Harry, what do you think about that?" He said, "John, whatever you do, don't trust the banks." And I thought he was being cynical. But boy, oh boy, was he right. Because within 6 months, the bank had told me, "John, there's no more money, and the $12 million that we've got out on construction and development funding with you, we need back." I went and saw the head of the Queensland operation. And I said, "Hey, we've got a big problem because you've given me a finance approval for $8 million on this new development. Here it is in writing." And he looked at me and said, "Yes, you can tear that up because we'll find a legal way out of that. You can forget about getting any more money from the bank." I did what I think is I made probably the smartest move I've ever made in my financial career. After 25 years with the bank, I just shrugged my shoulders, walked out of the office after shaking hands, saying thank you, and I shut that door. Came back, saw my executives, "We've got to find another way." We set up Custodian land. And why it's always interesting is because things happen for a reason. Might have been 6 months earlier, David Shaw, an accountant who acts for nearly 1,000 clients, came along to me and said, "John, the clients love doing the passive wealth building, but they'd like to be involved in the active wealth building. Is there any way you can see to them being involved in the active wealth building?" I used to scratch my head and say, "Gee, David, I just don't know. I just can't think of any way." When the bank door shut on me, I realised that was the perfect way for clients to get together, syndicate, and do financing and funding where they can earn returns of 10, 12, 13, even up to 30% per annum on some deals. Today, we are developing 1,000 blocks of land without 1 cent of bank funding. And that was me after 25 years of me only ever using bank funding. How my cheese has moved, but how I've seized that opportunity. Now, it's all changing for us in Australia. We have, and you read about job losses, but you don't read about job creation. And here's the fact. We're creating a lot more jobs than we're losing. That's why our unemployment rate's falling. And it's falling amidst the fact that we have strong migration. You've got to remember that. The fastest growing industry today, well, it's not mining. But mining itself is taking care of all the manufacturing and all the retail positions that are being lost. But over on top of all of that is healthcare. Healthcare is creating more jobs than any of those losses put together, and some, and some, and some. And you've got to think to yourself, how can I prosper in the next 5 to 10 years knowing what's happening in Australia? And what's happening is we have an ageing population. So obviously healthcare is going to grow. Yes, we've got mining and there's so many opportunities, but you have to be mobile. So we have areas like South Australia potentially losing jobs, while Queensland and Western Australia gaining jobs, and also Victoria and New South Wales gaining jobs, but in certain areas and in certain industries. And you've got to be on top of that. Like 10 years ago, IT was the buzz. Now it's healthcare, or mining, or ancillary projects. So be on top of that, but most importantly, wake up every day and embrace change. Life is change. So for you to embrace life, you have to embrace this change, but be aware of it. Aware that your cheese has moved. And don't worry about who's moved your cheese, it just has. Now, where is it? Where can I go to use these talents to the best of my ability and recognize that the cheese has moved for people around you as well? Now, interesting, I look at the census and demographics, and I'll just touch on this in a little way. What's happened is we had the number of population per household falling, it stopped falling, and what we're finding is more shared communities in households. So in your properties and in properties around, we're going to become cash flow positive because of the opportunity of renting out bedrooms to students or joint tenancies or dual occupancies. And today now we have fixed rates, long-term fixed rates, 3 to 5 years, under 6%. That means you can become cash flow positive, a changing opportunity. embrace that change, but sit down all the time and think to yourself, do the mind map, right brain creative, how can I make the most of whoever or of the fact that my cheese has moved? And when you have this opportunity, you start focusing on the opportunity rather than focusing on the problem. And that's a real secret to life. Thank you for listening to me.